Welcome to Module 5. Our subject is labeling and packaging. Upon completion of this module, you will be able to identify basic regulatory labeling requirements, recognize variables involved in label design, identify criteria required to select labeling for your product, locate sources for graphics design, labels, printing and labeling equipment, identify criteria required to select packaging for your product, locate sources for packaging, and determine your packaging and labeling costs. Let's start with discussing labeling considerations. You will want to start designing your label, determine your packaging, and develop your product all at the same time in order to send a consistent message to your customer. Marketers say that for the consumer, the package is the product. That is, most customers will respond to seeing a package and label by immediately envisioning an image of the product itself. It's important that this be kept in mind as you make label decisions regarding the words, color, the style, and the format of the graphics. Labeling is used for two purposes: to inform the consumer with your name, ingredients, instructions for cooking, what is the size of the product, and who produced it. The second purpose is to market the product. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency administers the Food and Drug Act and regulations, and the Consumer Packaging and Labeling Act and regulations as they relate to food. You can view and download the Guide to Food Labeling and Advertising from the CFIA website. Chapter 2 of the guide contains the basic labeling requirements. The guidelines include requirements on package size, common name of food. If the product is regulated, it would have a common name, for example, mayonnaise or milk chocolate. If it is a product that is not regulated, then it goes by the name that the food is commonly known by, for example, chocolate cake or orange drink. Net quantity in metric units, name and address, durable life or shelf life, ingredients, and finally, bilingual labels. In the United States, nutritional labeling is mandatory with some exceptions. In Canada, nutritional labeling is a core requirement of the CFIA. There are some exceptions for nutritional labeling, and those are listed on the CFIA website in the Nutritional Toolkit. This panel is an example of the basic requirements for a nutritional label and include consumer-friendly measures and metric sizes, the core nutrients as shown on the label, and any declaration of additional nutrients. The CFIA Nutritional Toolkit is located in the Food Labeling section of the CFIA website and contains all of the information you will require to ensure you comply. You will find the link to the CFIA Food Labeling Guide at the end of this module. Another important factor in developing a compliant package for your product are Universal Product Codes, or UPC codes, which are used for product identification and retail inventory management. Most retailers will require a UPC code to electronically identify your package, and they may also require additional UPC codes for your outer shipping boxes and for any master cases. For example, if you sold nutritional bars, you would require a UPC code for the individual bar, the master case the bar is sold out of, and finally the outer case the bars come shipped in to the retailer. There are many suppliers of UPC codes, but you must ensure that the codes are coming from a reputable firm. Check with the small-scale food processor members or other trusted manufacturers to ensure you are purchasing your codes from a reputable firm. Before drafting your label, you should know where the product will be sold, locally within the province, or will it be across Canada and eventually exported. Product information, also called romance copy. The amount of romance copy really depends on the size of the package you are designing, but usually there is at least one area of the package that can be used to tell your company and product story. How the label will be applied. For example, if your label is on a roll, it would be important to know how the label comes off the roll, as each labeler is different and there is no one standard method for labelers to apply labels to a product. Packaging shape and size. Suitable labeling material for handling and storage. For example, if your product is refrigerated, it would be important to have a label that is water resistant or even waterproof, as refrigerators may age packaging from the humidity. Regulatory requirements that you can find on the CFIA website. And finally, your labeling and packaging budget. Getting help from a graphic designer is recommended, and particularly one with packaging experience. A well-designed label with visual appeal will help in selling your product. Select a few designers to interview. Ask to see samples of their packaging work and discuss fees and expenses. Once you have selected a designer, you will want the designer to know the package sizes, number of colors for printing, the copy that must appear on the label, who your competition is, where will you sell your product. Other points and considerations with labels include consulting with the CFIA before the final proof of your label is complete. They will review it and make recommendations. Ensure you proofread your label several times and have others proofread as well before you go to print. Consider that there is a minimum order when you print your labels or packaging, and it can be significant depending on the packaging or label and where it is produced. Try to keep in mind that any advantage you may save on price breaks for greater label or packaging quantities may be overcome by the costs of disposing of unused labels. Regulation changes, ingredient changes, or typos can make changes in your product far more often than you might think. Now that you understand the basics of labeling considerations, download and print out worksheet number 12, titled Your Label, and describe the kind of labeling you would choose for your product. When worksheet number 12 is complete, you can add it to the operations section of your business plan binder. In Module 2, we learned about packaging protection. Along with protecting your product from light, oxygen, moisture, and handling, you will want to consider the following when choosing the right package. For multiple products, group as a family visually. Will you have more than one product? If so, you may want to have some defining characteristics in your packaging that show a particular grouping of products fit together as a family of products. How the product will be displayed. Does the product stack one on top of the other like jars, or is it in bags and sits up on a shelf? Are you aware of how your product will look if it is on the shelf? It may require some sort of racking or holder to make sure it faces the consumer. Environmental friendliness. Overpackaging should be considered when selling products in today's market. Recognition requirements. For example, using unusual packaging shapes or colors. You may want your consumer to identify with an unusual packaging or color sequence, but be cautious when choosing packaging that is proprietary, as it can get expensive and there can be long lead times, large minimums, and other setups and hidden costs. Image communication. Type of package may indicate the use of the product. For example, snack foods are usually sold in plastic bags and communicate entertainment and casual consumption. Technical requirements. It's important to be aware that not all packaging machines can fill any size opening. Make sure you check that the opening of your bags, jars, boxes, etc. are of the appropriate size to fit the equipment used to fill them. Download and print worksheet number 13, titled Packaging, and complete the worksheet with determining the advantages and disadvantages of each type of packaging. Once you have completed worksheet number 13, place it in the operations section of your business plan binder. Now that you have completed the worksheet on the advantages and disadvantages of types of packaging, download worksheet number 14, titled Your Package, and describe the packaging you would choose for your own products. Once you have completed worksheet number 14, add it to the operations section of your business plan binder. Finally, we will discuss labeling and packaging costs. You will need to include the fixed and variable costs of your labels and packaging. Variable or direct costs vary directly with the volume sold. You may also have fixed or indirect costs, such as graphic or package design. These costs would be constant regardless of volume of business. Some examples of fixed costs are graphic designer, printing plates, labeling equipment, and other one-time packaging costs. Some examples of variable costs are labels and printing costs. The cost of packaging includes the actual packaging covering your product, packing material for shipping, as well as any printing on the packaging material. Examples of packaging costs are fixed cost, graphic designer, package designer, printing plates, other one-time packaging costs. Variable costs, packaging, for example, jars, boxes, bags, and outer cases, and printing costs on the outer cases. The following is an example of packaging and labeling costs to be entered to determine the cost per unit of packaging and labeling for a product. Press pause and complete the sample table, and then download Cost Sheet E titled Packaging and Labeling Costs and fill in the costs for your product. Once you have completed the sheet, transfer the total packaging and labor costs per unit to Cost Sheet A, Variable Costs.